pretty interested in. So let's just start here with a Baalbek. These are, the megaliths in Baalbek are thought to be basically the largest megaliths in the world. Megaliths, a megalith that weighs even 5-10 tons is a giant megalith. These things are huge. They weigh 1,000 tons or more. This is the heaviest stone block that it was found in a quarry at Baalbek. It weighs an astonishing 1,650 tons. I mean, that is so incredibly heavy. I mean, you would need a fixed crane to move this. I mean, archaeologists cannot explain it. And that's why they just, they won't talk about it, basically, because they're so huge, these blocks of stone. What's at Baalbek is this huge platform with these giant blocks of stone, and then there's a Roman temple on top of it. And so archaeologists say, oh, the Romans built this whole thing, but they can't figure out how they could have done it. So you have the same thing in Jerusalem, where you have this other giant block. This is in a tunnel, and this is the Wailing Wall going back. And she's standing there, and here's a pointer here. So yeah, she's standing here. These are other blocks of stone. They're perfectly fitted together. You couldn't see this until just like 10 or 15 years ago. And then here's this giant, huge block here with other blocks on top of it. So this is also like Baalbek, where you have some giant 1,000-ton block. It's like the base of a platform. And you have more of this underwater. There's over 200 known sunken cities in the Mediterranean. And this one is just off Sicily. It came out. It's a huge monolith. It's like an obelisk or something like that. It's got a hole in it. So this is, it's underwater stuff that's in the Mediterranean. This is an aerial photo of the unfinished obelisk in Aswan. This is also one of the largest obelisks too. This weighed about 1,000 tons. What happened with this obelisk, and it's out of solid granite, obelisks have to be perfect. And as they were cutting this obelisk in ancient times, they were cutting underneath it, and they realized that there was a crack in the rock that they couldn't see until they started cutting underneath it. As soon as they saw that crack, they stopped work on it, because the obelisk wasn't going to be perfect. It was going to have a little crack in it. So they just abandoned it. They said, okay, we can't use this obelisk. We'll talk about obelisks more later. But yeah, as I talk in my books, they're obelisks on the moon. We'll get into that towards the end of the show. The whole purpose of obelisks, too, is a mystery. When you get into these things, anything that, when you get into civilization that's before 10,000 BC, you're basically talking about Atlantis. And that's the story of Atlantis. Atlantis was these concentric circles, and there was a big city in the center with pyramids and stuff. There was a big mountain. So that's the story of Atlantis. It was out in the Atlantic. It's underwater now. There's a similar story out in the Indian Ocean of this land, Kumari Kondam, which went south of India. It's supposedly stretched through there. That's Hindus talk about that. So let's now go to South America and to Peru. This is at a site between Cusco and Ollantaytambo. It's called Ollantaytambo. It's on the way to Machu Picchu. Here again, you have these huge blocks of stone. This is andesite. It's been cut, perfectly fitted together here. This thing too weighs probably hundreds of tons, and it's perfectly fitted together. As you walk around to the side on this at Ollantaytambo, this is what you see. You see these. You see these blocks that are here, and they're just sitting here, like this. And this one has even smaller blocks underneath it. These are all perfectly cut. They're blocks of granite. This is what you see today as a tourist, but this is what it looked like in Spanish and Inca times too. I mean, nothing has changed here for hundreds of years. And it's like these giant blocks were just, blown away or scattered or something, and they're still sitting there. The government today, the modern government, they can't move these stones. mean, they're just sitting there. And then what you have these keystone cuts. And I talk about this a lot in my books. Keystone cuts, like this T shape. And what is a molten metals are poured into that. There's going to be another one of these on the other side. So you have one block has this T cut, but then another block is fitted together. It has another T block, and then there's molten metal is poured in there. So to show you how screwy the whole thing is, here's one of those keystone cuts up here on a side of a wall. But that's in the totally wrong place. I mean, this is not where it would be. That has to actually be on a horizontal surface, not a vertical surface like this. So this block is in a place where it wasn't meant to be. As you walk up into this area, they call it the Sun Temple at Ollantaytambo, you have, again, perfectly fitted jigsaw pieces of granite. I mean, you can't even slip a razor blade or something. It's perfectly cut and fitted. I mean, today in modern Peru, they can't do this. And they're saying, oh, the Incas did this only about 100 years before the Spanish got there. Because the Incas are pretty near to our own timeline. Here's Machu Picchu. It's a secret city. It's a megalithic city. It's one of the most popular tourist spots in South America and certainly in Peru. It's a fantastic place, and it is a megalithic city. It's on top of this mountain. People didn't really know it, where it was until it was discovered about 1910. So if you go farther south from all these, what you're looking at, you have Lake Titicaca. This is a satellite view of Lake Titicaca. It's the largest navigable lake, highest navigable lake, and highest and largest. This part of the lake up here is very, very deep. It's almost 1,000 feet deep. This southern part of the lake is shallower. They say there are ruins, underwater ruins here. Also, UFOs come out of the lake. Supposedly they're around 4 in the morning or something, and they even have tours where people stay up all night and they look for UFOs coming out. One of the strange things about Lake Titicaca, too, is that there are seahorses in Lake Titicaca, which is totally bizarre. Seahorses are normally in tropical, coral reefs like Indonesia and stuff like that. So for there to be seahorses in Lake Titicaca shows that it was at one time at sea level, and then this huge uplift took the whole lake and everything up. They have a hard time explaining it. There are underwater ruins, as I said, around in Lake Titicaca. Also, this is also in Peru. These towers, these mushroom towers, they're also perfectly fitted together with blocks of stone, and even up at the top. So these towers are pretty interesting. There's another spot there. This is all near Lake Titicaca called Cotimbo, and it's up on top of this mesa up here. When you get up there are these square buildings, also these towers. They're perfectly fitted together, blocks of stone. And it's a kind of remote area. So you have here these blocks of stone, and you see things like up here, this snake, a serpent. There's another one here, cut in relief. In other words, you have to cut the whole block around to make like this snake. There are also lizards and things. Here's another snake thing here on this one. And there's certain places around, also in Cusco, you see these snakes that are carved onto these rocks, again, in relief. There's a lake up there too called Lake Umayu near Silustani. This is all around Lake Titicaca. It's a different lake. UFOs come out of this lake. And there's also towers here as well. More towers with these snake things on it. That's in relief. They're not sure what archaeologists think they are burial towers, but in my mind, they're actually smelters. They're for smelting ore and the gold and the copper and everything. Well, now let's go to a Yazidi temple up in northern Iraq. And they were part of that whole ISIS stuff. So what you have here at the Yazidi temples are, again, these snakes. This is ancient Sumerian, and these are also carved into, so here's that temple today, and here's that snake. So we were seeing these snakes in Peru, these snakes cut into the rock, and we're seeing that too in these Yazidi temples in Sumeria. All right, let's go back to Lake Titicaca, and this is Tiwanaku, which is just off a few miles from the South Shore. What you have, one of the things that's there is the what's called the Gate of the Sun. This is supposedly Viracocha up here. This gate is a monolithic gate. It's one giant piece of granite. It would have had other walls fitted into it, like over here and stuff. It's a doorway, but it's one solid piece of stone. It's been cracked by an earthquake here. This is Viracocha, they say. He's got a feathered headdress on. He's holding these two staffs. And on either side of him are these birdmen, and they're running toward him. So this is what he looks like. He's got tears coming down from his eyes. They call that the tears of the sun. What these tears are is it's a representative of, I believe, molten metals. And that's what was at Tiwanaku. It was a metallurgical factory for smelting and refining gold, copper, silver, even iron and stuff. So here you see the birdmen on either side of him, and they have wings, and they also have their tears coming down their eyes. You see that here, tears of the sun. They're running toward him, and they have wings. They are birdmen. So they're birdmen, and they can fly. Here's a jade Olmec birdman found in Costa Rica. He's Olmec. He's got the cone head and stuff like that. And he's got the wings too. He's a birdman. He can fly. So here we go. This is the famous Puma Punku site. That's so many people in Ancient Aliens, you know, that's one of their favorite episodes. There you have these huge sandstone platforms, but then what's on top of them is granite. Here again, I was talking about those keystone cuts. Here they are again. This is an area that's been covered with mud and muck. It's like a tidal wave from Lake Titicaca just destroyed this area. And then you see the keystone cuts, the clamps. The clamps have been removed, but these would be metal clamps in all these spots. Here you see on the sandstone also keystone cuts for metal clamps. These are huge clamps, these ones. Here's some of the clamps in the museum there. So you can see what they were. They're an alloy. They're basically bronze metals, stuff like that. Well, these keystone cuts are in other places too. They're in Vietnam, at the Kong areas too. They're also in Indonesia, Borobudur. So, I mean, they're the exact same kind of keystone cuts. And this is an unusual way of fitting blocks of stone together. I mean, the people in Vietnam and Indonesia would just make this up independently of what was going on in Peru. Seems impossible. I mean, this is a very special kind of thing. All right, so this is from the museum at Tiwanaku, where they're taking the molten metals and they're pouring it into these cuts. These are the H blocks here, the famous H blocks. But here, look, you know, they have these tunics on. They're wearing very simple tunics. They're doing this with a campfire. I mean, this is impossible, what they're doing. And these blocks here are perfectly cut, granite blocks. I mean, this is a mural that's, you know, paradox, where you have this super high technology and all this articulation, but then you have these relatively primitive guys with a campfire pouring molten metals in here. It doesn't make any sense. But this is mainstream archaeology. There is a pyramid to the west of Lake Titicaca, and there's a village there. You can't go there. The villagers won't let you go. But the villagers themselves are excavating this pyramid. Not the Bolivian government, but these villagers. And they found things there. They found, in 1960, they found this bowl called the Fuente Magna Bowl. Today, this bowl is in the main museum in La Paz, the main archaeological museum. They tell you not to take photos of it, but, well, but they tell you no, you know you have to do it. So that's my friend Christopher Dunn there. And what's important about the Fuente Magna Bowl is it has Sumerian writing on it. Okay, it has two types of Sumerian writing. It has cuneiform Sumerian cuneiform here, and then it has Sumerian hieroglyphs over here. They wrote in cuneiform and in hieroglyphs. So the idea that this bowl, it's a ceramic bowl, that this bowl came from a pyramid near Tiwanaku, this totally changes the history in South America. This bowl can't be here because it has Sumerian writing on it. This bowl is proof of the Anunnaki, of Sumerians coming to South America. And it's in the main museum in La Paz. So what can mainstream archaeologists do about this?
Translate it.
Nothing. They just ignore it. They pretend it's not there. And you would think, National Geographic or somebody would, have this in one of their episodes. No. They just pretend this doesn't exist. The only show that I know of that has featured this is Ancient Aliens. So that's something. There's also this granite monolith called the Pocatilla statue. It also has Sumerian writing on it as well. Here are the H blocks. Okay, so here are the famous H blocks. They're cut out of granite. They're very well articulated. These inner corners and things like that. They're very sharp. They're very extremely well made. Here's what it looks like. They're like identical. The H blocks. They're like kind of Lego blocks. They're cut and they're articulated in special ways. If you look at the articulation and everything here, these inside corners, this is all very difficult to do. You can't really do this with chisels and stuff. This has to be done with power tools, the kind of diamond power tools and things that we have today. So here we go. I'm going to do this. Here we go. Oops. No, I did something. Okay. Throw it down somehow. There it is. Okay. Here we go. All right, so here's how the H blocks fit this animation. It's like a Vimana or some big airship landed here with a machine shop inside it that just started spewing out these H blocks. And these H blocks are all made and they fit together in certain special ways. And you put them together and then they create these walls. And so it's like a prefabricated way of building a giant wall or something. And we're talking about computer-aided design and stuff like that. To cut these blocks in such a fashion and then have them so they fit together. I mean, this is astonishing, really, this whole thing of what they do. All right, so now we'll go back to Egypt. This is the Serapeum. That's Christopher Dunn there, my friend, British-American engineer. So the Serapeum is underground, and it's astonishing. You go down underground. When you're there, all you see is desert and sand dunes and stuff. You go down inside, and what's down inside are all of these huge basalt boxes that are like sarcophagi. Basalt is even harder than granite. It's one of the hardest stones. So in order to cut and move these things weigh like 80 tons, and they're put into these little closet sections. So how they could even move these things around. And there's no place for 100 people or even 20 people hauling ropes or something. There's no place for these people to stand or pull on these things. So these things had to be moved. Here you can see how they're put into these little niches and stuff. How anyone could move these things. And even today, the Egyptians with modern equipment can't move these things or do anything with them. And even to make these things, I mean, they would have to be having a drill and drilling down through basalt. Basalt is extremely hard. I mean, it takes diamond tools. Here's some hieroglyphs are etched on a few of them. And even doing this would be something. You would almost need like lasers. Or again, diamond tools, diamond drills and things like that to go in there. It's perfectly fitted. There's this Chris with he's got special gauges and things. He's looking at the perfection and how perfect the angles are and how flat everything is. And he's the one who's convinced me that, yeah, they had to use power tools, diamond grinders, diamond saws, diamond drills, and things like that. I mean, it's astonishing when you go in there. And this was closed for decades. And they only reopened it around 2005. All right, now let's go to Costa Rica, the mysterious artificial stone bowls. I always get a kick out of this. They know these are man-made. They're made out of granite. Some of them are huge. They're perfectly round. This is also something, they had to be made with power tools. And it's one of the most difficult things to do, is make something that's perfectly round. And to try and bash that out with a hammer or something like that. So you go to the museums there. These balls are found in the southern part of, here we go, Indiana Jones. You know, he's being chased by one of these giant balls or whatever. So they use that in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here's some of them. This is what they find them in the jungles and stuff out there. Well, they have no explanation for these things either. How they were made, who made them, what they were for. Nobody's really figured it out. When you go to the museums there, they tell you that the smaller ones like this, that the chiefs and the head honchos, they got to have a round ball in their tomb or something like that. But some of these round balls are huge. They're the size of a car. So here we go. You can see this is a fairly modern one that's been excavated in southern Costa Rica. And you can see how big these things are. And they're buried in the jungle. It's like they were also washed up in some tidal wave or cataclysm up into the southern part of Costa Rica. Well, a guy sent me this book. It has to do with this trolley line from Santa Monica that they made. It was a trolley on a track. Well, they're going through there, and there were these hills in Los Angeles, and because it was an electric trolley, it couldn't go up a very high grade. Everything had to be pretty flat. So they brought in these steam shovels to take out these hills there in Los Angeles. And what did they find? A bunch of stone balls buried in these hills there in Los Angeles. So how about that? Isn't that weird? All right, you're looking at other stone balls, Franz Joseph Land, that's way up near Spitsbergen and stuff like that. And there are granite stone balls up there too. And it's one of the things that tourists do. If they get them up there on a cruise ship or something, they jump out and they take photos of these round stone balls that are there. So, how do these things, these things, they know they're man-made in Costa Rica. Now they're saying up here in Franz Joseph Land that they're somehow natural. It's like, well, are they, how does, in nature, these are in Bosnia, also some round stone balls. There's a creek there that has all these round balls in it. They're pretty big. Here's more of the ones in Bosnia. Now, these are in Mexico, the piedras bolas. These ones, they say, are natural, and they claim that they're blown out from a volcano. So they're spewed out from a volcano, and then they spin through the air, they become a round ball, and then they solidify, and then they land. So that's how they're trying to explain that. Once again, you kind of wonder if that's really the case. This is one of the few cases where perhaps they are natural. Now, in Siberia, and I've gotten into this stone ball stuff, they're doing this excavation in Siberia. They also find these stone balls up in Siberia. And it's like somebody is making these in ancient times, but we don't know why or what they were for. And they're huge. These are the Moraki boulders in New Zealand. This is on the west coast of the South Island. They apparently are man-made too, these balls. They try to say they're natural somehow, geologically natural, but they can't explain it. Here's the Moraki boulders here. In Italy too, they have places where these stone balls are found. Here's some more in Italy. More of them in Italy. They put them up near castles and stuff like that. Here we are, more stone balls. Once again, you might think in this case that they had catapults or something. We're flinging these stone balls around. That doesn't seem to be the case. Although some of these are smaller, and they're kind of like cannonballs or something like that, maybe. So here we go. These are in Croatia actually. And there's a place in China, Gongxi and Hunan, where this town has got a bunch of stone balls. And once again, they become a tourist attraction. This is in Malta, where there also stone balls are found. And this is in Sardinia. Here we are, stone balls in Sardinia. This is one site there that has that. So, and also when I was in the Isle of Man, which is out there, it's between Ireland and England, and there's a stone ball in the harbor. that's famous, and everyone knows it's there. You can only see it at low tide. But it's also some man-made granite ball. But once again, what's it doing there? Well, if you go to Easter Island, you'll also see some stone balls. Here's one in the museum. And they say when you're on Easter Island that the most important thing on the whole island is not those statues and stuff. It's a stone. That stone ball, which has some other smaller stone balls around it. But they tell you Easter Island, they say, yeah, this is the most important thing on the whole island. That stone ball. And that is in an area here, the Ranu quarry. This is where also all these Easter Island stone heads are. Some of them where they were quarrying them. They're sitting there buried, kind of up to their necks or up to their heads. I mean, they're just buried in volcanic ash and stuff like that. And they claim in Easter Island that the quarry is right here, and they put statues around the island, and the idea was the statues they face outward, and the idea is that they were to protect the island and keep it from sinking into the ocean, as the rest of this Hiva had. But here again, you see these are the ones at the quarry, and how they're buried, they're falling over. Inside the crater, there's a crater there, there's other statues, and they're all looking down towards this crater lake. Here's what some of the statues look like and how big they are. Some of them are gigantically huge. And they all had a top knot on top of them. This was separate. And I maintain in my books that these are statues of Shiva. And I get into that later. But here you can see this is Thor Heyerdahl. So you can kind of see, I mean, mainstream archaeologists are saying, oh, well, they just got buried, and they didn't even make these that long ago. Maybe they're 1,000 years old. But yet they're buried in 40, 50 feet of soil and stuff. What's that all about? It's like they've been there for thousands of years, or that there was some cataclysm. So you can kind of see what it's like for these huge, huge statues and what's going on there. So here you see them more. So the idea, too, that the statues that they put around the island, they had inlaid eyes and a power. The Easter Islanders believe this power came out of their eyes. They called it mana, and it was to protect the island. This is a weird statue. This is a unique statue on Easter Island. It's a female, their breasts, but she has a strange head and eyes. Kind of looks like an extraterrestrial or something. And then they found this one around in 1960. This head. It's now in the museum there, and it kind of looks like an alien type skull. It's totally different than the other statues there. What's also there is a wall called Vinabu, and it's facing Peru and South America, and it's also perfectly fitted together like the walls in Peru, and even these little notching stones and stuff. But once again, they're perfectly fitted, they're cut perfectly with saws and stuff. So we're looking at power tools. I mean, that's what it takes to do this. And it takes even more than just power tools to perfectly fit these things together. There's also one weird statue that's there where the guy is kneeling down. And this is what they call a quizuo position. So quizuo is somebody on their knees with their hands on their knees and their head is forward. They call this quizuo. So here's a quizuo statue from China. Here's a quizuo statue from Egypt. He's on his knees, he's got his hands on his knees. It's an unusual position to be in. Here's another Shang Chinese position. He's in a quizuo position. He's got a mohawk haircut. Here's also statues from Tiwanaku. They're in the quizuo position with their hands on their knees and wearing turbans. Here's an Olmec statue from Mexico, out of basalt. He's in the quizuo position with his hands on his knees, like that. And he's also got the top knot on his head, like Easter Island statues, and that's how Shiva also has that. Here's a quizuo statue from the Indus Valley. This is also very old, the Indus Valley script and whatnot. Giorgio and I went here, and I've been here like 5 times. This is Nan Madol on Pohnpei Island. This is south of Guam. It's a Micronesian island. This city is 100 artificial islands. It's half in the water, half out of the water. it's the eighth wonder of the world. They say there's over 250 million tons of basalt here. 250 million tons. And it's stacked up in kind of Lincoln log fashion, about walls about 40 feet high. There's huge sea walls. Some of it's underwater. You see these huge blocks of basalt. There's a lot of stuff underwater there, including big basalt stones and stuff. Here you see some of the stuff underwater. Or underwater. I had to take these when I had snorkeling gear and stuff on it. Oops. Here we go. They don't even know where all this basalt came from. In fact, entire mountains would have been dismantled for that much basalt, 250 million tons of it. They think that this mountain, which is on the other side of the island, they think that some of the basalt came from here. They call this Chicken Shit Mountain, is the name of it. And the story is, the islanders tell you, is that all these basalt blocks, which weigh up to 80 tons, that they flew them across the island. So they were levitating these stones from across the island and then putting them into the city of Namadal. It's astonishing, that whole thing. All right, well, now let's switch gears a little bit. We'll go into the cone heads here. So yeah, you go down to Peru and you get some of these areas of desert areas of Peru around Nazca and Paracas, where you see these conehead guys with these strange skulls. Here's one here, this guy. I mean, really extended, weird skulls. And, you know, they featured this in Ancient Aliens, of course. But here are the museums they've gone. In most museums in the world where these skulls now exist, they've removed them from display. Partly because of the show Ancient Aliens, I believe, because people are now, they're like, oh, you know, aliens, extraterrestrials. So, you know, they have this x-rays and stuff of them. This is a particularly unusual skull because, you know, there are ways of head binding, and they know that some of the people are done this way. You bind the head, and then what happens is you have these plates in your head, but they come together eventually, and you have these sutures. But this skull doesn't have that. So it doesn't have the normal plates in your head coming together, and which would have on a normal skull. So this is an unusual skull, and you have to wonder if this is, and that's a big question, whether people are naturally have these elongated skulls, rather than it being an artificial deformity. And with this guy, it would seem that, yeah, his skull is naturally this elongated shape. So he's maybe like an Anunnaki or some extraterrestrial. Here's maybe a child, too, with his elongated skulls and stuff. This is from Mexico. This is from northern Mexico. He's also got this elongated skull. A lot of the Olmecs have the elongated skulls and stuff, too. The Chinook Indians up near Seattle, they also did that, too. But they were artificially creating these elongated skulls with these cradle boards. I went to high school and college in Missoula, Montana. Just north of Missoula is the largest freshwater lake west of Mississippi, which is called Flathead Lake. Well, it's named Flathead Lake because of the Flathead Indians, and the Flathead Indians are called the Flathead Indians because they also did this, and they made these elongated skulls and stuff. So that's Pacific Northwest. So here's another weird one, a skull of a Philistine in Lebanon. I mean, that's David and Goliath. So David, the story of him and Goliath, he's maybe also battling some guy with a big, long, elongated skull. In Egypt, Akhenaten and Nefertiti, their daughters, they also had these elongated skulls. This is Meritata, one of the daughters of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. So she's also a conehead. She's got this elongated skull. In Sumeria, you have these Ubaid figures. They come from ancient Sumeria. They have what they call the coffee bean eyes, these statues. He's got the elongated skull. These guys do look like extraterrestrials. They have noses and stuff, but they have the elongated skulls. And they are perhaps the Anunnaki. So here we go. They almost have like an insect-like look to them. So these are real. This is real stuff, and these are in museums in Iraq today. Here they are. They're in a flying saucer, a flying disc with wings on it. There's 3 guys sitting up here. This is Sumerian cylinder seal. These are guys. Now the Anunnaki always wore these special hats, and when you can see these guys, they are Anunnaki. And when you have those hats, that's the sign of an Anunnaki. The one on the left is a woman. They have wings. She's got wings. She's a birdman. She can fly. So here's also these Iraqi, Sumerian kind of things. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. We'll look at a few UFO photos. Here's one from Ward, Colorado in 1929. So here's what appears to be a flying saucer there. New York City, 1950, big, long, cigar-shaped craft over New York City. Here it is. So, also this one over Utah, 1960. This looks a lot like the George Adamski craft, if you're familiar with that. This is interesting too. These are a series of photos taken supposedly by a submarine, an American submarine in the North Atlantic in March of 1971. And these appeared in a French magazine about 2005. And somebody in the U.S. Navy apparently gave these photos to this French magazine. So the first photo is of what is elongated thing coming out of the water. So this is up near Iceland, apparently. It comes out of the water, it's shedding water and steam off it and stuff like that. Then it comes upright, and that's like steam and water coming off it, so it levels out there, and the submarine is watching it the whole time and taking photos. Here's, again, another photo from it. That thing down the middle is actually from the magazine, because it was like, that's Staples right there. So that line is just part of the magazine. But here you can see some lights on the side of the craft. And then the whole thing, stretches out above the water. Then, here's one last photo of the big cigar-shaped craft. And then, another UFO came out of the water after that, a smaller kind of flying saucer, triangular-shaped craft, and it flew up. It came up out of the water too, and then it flew away. So these are pretty amazing photos taken by the U.S. Navy, apparently. So this is also an interesting little bit. This was in New Zealand, 1978. There was cargo flights coming from the South Island of New Zealand going up to the North Island every night. And it was being followed by a UFO, night after night. And it was following it as it flew north. And so one time they decided to put a film camera on the plane, the cargo plane, to film this. And this is a film strip from it. So here's this UFO. But the thing is, this last thing over here, or second, third to last, on the far right. And we'll look at that, this. So while this UFO, it apparently knew it was being filmed. It wanted to be filmed. And in 1/32 of a second, it made this. So the frames, it's 32 frames of a second. So in one frame of the film, it made this figure 8 like that. I mean, that is astonishing. So that craft was able to just, within a millisecond, do this little thing. So that's most Americans have never seen that. It's only from a New Zealand book. Here's a couple of other interesting pics from Uruguay, 1977. Very clear, disc-shaped craft. This was interesting too. In 2016, people took this photo of this kind of arrow-type craft hovering over Dayton, Ohio. And Dayton is, it's the Air Force Base Center. The Hangar 18 and all that. So that's interesting. So whatever this was, it's some oddball thing. In the Baltic Sea anomaly, this was the Swedish Navy was filming this. They found this craft on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, this thing on the right. And in fact, it's interesting because it looks like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. So I thought that was kind of cool. Here we go. They just had a conference a couple of conferences in Washington, D.C. Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, he was their UFO expert, you know, talking about stuff, although he never really said much. And, you know, it's hard to really get anything out of these conferences they do. He did release this one photo here, and it's of this orb. This is in Mosul in northern Iraq. And in fact, this photo is taken by a drone that's also hovering there. And it was just taking photos of Mosul, and then suddenly it catches what is apparently this orb, like flying along the city streets there. And this is the one thing that, you know, the government could come up with. They're like, well, yeah, we've got a photo of UFO. Here it is. So, yeah, they're not coming up with a whole lot. So, a lot of people haven't heard of Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, but he was first director of the CIA. He was the director of naval intelligence previous to that. He's also the top guy at MJ-12 and the MJ-12 documents. And he told the New York Times in 1960, he said, through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe that the unknown flying objects are nonsense. I mean, this guy is the top, you know, military intelligence guy in America.